The stars had never looked so threatening. Captain Lisa Torres stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty, watching the massive alien structure grow larger on the main screen. The station was unlike anything humans had ever built. It stretched for miles in every direction, its surface covered in strange blue lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. After 3 months of travel through space, they had finally reached their destination. "Distance to the station?" Torres asked her navigation officer. 200 kilometers and closing, Captain," came the reply. Beside her, Ambassador Kyle Matthews adjusted his formal uniform one more time. His hands shook slightly, though he tried to hide it. This was the moment humanity had been preparing for since they first detected the alien signals 2 years ago. First contact with an advanced alien civilization. "Are you ready, Ambassador?" Torres asked quietly. Matthews nodded. As ready as anyone can be for something like this. The alien station had sent them coordinates and docking instructions in perfect English. That fact alone had surprised everyone back on Earth. How did these aliens know their language? How long had they been watching humanity? "Captain, we're receiving another transmission," reported Communications Officer Beth Williams. "Put it through." The main screen flickered and changed. Instead of the station, they now saw a tall, thin creature with pale blue skin and large black eyes. It wore what looked like an elaborate robe covered in symbols. When it spoke, its voice was cold and mechanical. Human. "Vessel, you will dock at Bay 7. Your delegation will come aboard immediately. You will follow all protocols exactly as instructed." The transmission ended abruptly. Torres frowned. "Not very friendly, are they?" Matthews tried to smile. "Maybe they're just formal. Different cultures, different customs." An hour later, Torres and Matthews walked through the alien station's corridors. The walls were smooth and white, with no decorations or signs. Their alien escort, a shorter creature with green skin, had not spoken a single word since meeting them at the docking bay. The only sounds were their footsteps echoing in the empty hallways. They entered a vast chamber with a curved ceiling that seemed to stretch up forever. At the center sat a group of aliens on raised platforms. Each looked different from the others. Some were tall and thin, others short and wide. Their skin colors ranged from blue to green to deep purple. But they all had one thing in common. They all stared at the humans with what looked like disgust. The blue-skinned alien from the transmission spoke first. "I am Chancellor Vextar of the Galactic Council. You stand before representatives of 47 civilized species." Matthews stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Chancellor, I am Ambassador Kyle Matthews, representing the people of Earth. We are honored to meet you and hope to begin friendly relations between our peoples." Several of the aliens made what sounded like laughing noises. Chancellor Vextar raised a long, thin hand for silence. "Your species has been observed for some time," Vextar said. "We have watched your primitive wars, your destruction of your own planet, your violent tendencies. The Council has decided that humanity cannot be allowed to spread this violence to other worlds." Torres felt her stomach drop. This was not how anyone had expected first contact to go. Matthews tried to keep his voice steady. "Chancellor, we understand that humanity has made mistakes in the past, but we have learned from them. We come in peace, seeking friendship and trade." "Peace?" Another alien, this one with purple skin and 4 arms, spoke up. "Your species has never known peace. Even now conflicts rage on your world. You build weapons of mass destruction. You poison your own air and water." "We're working to solve these problems." Matthews replied. That's part of growing as a species. We believe contact with other civilizations will help us become better. Chancellor. Vextar stood up from his platform. The Council has made its decision. Humanity will submit to our authority. You will surrender all military vessels and weapons. Your species will be classified as primitive and placed under Council protection. You will not be allowed to leave your solar system without permission. The chamber fell silent. Torres could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Matthews looked up at the towering alien. And if we refuse? Refusal is not an option, Vexitar said. No species has ever refused the Council's protection. Those who have tried to resist in the past were taught the error of their ways. What exactly does that mean? Torres asked, speaking for the first time. Vextar turned his large black eyes toward her. It means, Captain Torres, that resistance leads to extinction. The Council maintains order in this galaxy. We have done so for over 1,000 years. We will continue to do so. Matthews took a deep breath. Chancellor, I need to speak with my government before I can respond to such demands. You have 30 of your solar cycles, Vextar said. Return to your world. Discuss it with your leaders. But understand this. The Council's decision is final. You will submit, or you will be made to submit. The meeting was over. As Torres and Matthews were escorted back to their ship, neither spoke. The weight of what they had just heard was too heavy for words. Back on the USS Liberty, Torres ordered an immediate departure from the station. As soon as they were clear, she called a meeting with her senior officers. What did you think of our new neighbors? She asked grimly. They seemed pretty sure of themselves, said her tactical officer. Did you notice they never asked us anything about ourselves? They just told us what they had decided. Matthews sat heavily in his chair. 30 days. They're giving Earth 30 days to surrender. And if Earth says no? Asked the navigation officer. Torres looked out at the stars through the bridge windows. Then I think we're going to find out just how tough humans really are. As the USS Liberty jumped to faster-than-light speed, heading back toward Earth, none of them could have imagined what would happen next. The Galactic Council had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. They had never met a species quite like humanity. They were about to learn that some species simply refuse to kneel. The emergency session began at dawn in the underground command center beneath Geneva. President Jake Morrison had called together his top advisors after receiving Ambassador Matthews's report. The news from the Galactic Council had shocked everyone. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Morrison said, looking around the table. These aliens want us to give up our military, accept their rule, and promise never to leave our solar system? Defense Secretary Maria Santos nodded grimly. That's exactly what they said, sir, and they gave us 30 days to agree. Admiral Chris Baker, the head of Earth's combined space forces, slammed his hand on the table. This is outrageous! Who do they think they are? They think they're our new masters, said Dr. Angela Price, humanity's leading expert on alien life. She had been studying the recordings from the meeting with the Council. Look at their body language, their tone of voice. They're not making a request. They're giving orders. Morrison turned to Matthews, who had arrived on Earth just hours ago. Ambassador, what was your impression of these beings? Matthews looked tired. The stress of the past few days showed on his face. Mr. President, they were completely convinced that we would obey them. I don't think the possibility of refusal even entered their minds. Well, they're about to learn something new, Santos said. No free nation on Earth is going to accept slavery, no matter who's offering it. Dr. Price pulled up a holographic display showing the alien station. We need to understand what we're dealing with here. Their technology is clearly more advanced than ours. Their station alone is larger than any city on Earth. What about their weapons? Admiral Baker asked. Unknown, Price replied. But we have to assume they're as advanced as everything else they showed us. Morrison stood up and walked to the large window overlooking the command center. Below them, hundreds of technicians and analysts worked at their stations, coordinating Earth's response to the crisis. Admiral Baker, what's the current status of our space forces? We have 57 ships capable of combat operations, Baker replied. The newest ones are the Defiance-class destroyers, fast, well-armed, and equipped with our latest shield technology. How do they compare to what the aliens have? Baker hesitated. Sir, we honestly don't know. Our weapons are based on kinetic energy, railguns, missiles, projectiles. From what we observed, their technology seems to be energy-based. Lasers, plasma weapons, that sort of thing. Dr. Price looked up from her data tablet. That's interesting. Energy-based weapons have certain advantages, but they also have weaknesses. What kind of weaknesses? Santos asked. Energy requires power sources, Price explained. The more powerful the weapon, the more energy it needs. There are also issues with heat dissipation and electromagnetic interference. Morrison returned to his seat. Dr. Price, I want you to form a team to study everything we learned about their technology. Look for any advantage we might have. Yes, sir, Price replied. Admiral Baker, begin mobilizing our fleets. I want every combat-capable ship ready for action. Mr. President, Matthews interrupted, are we really considering fighting these beings? They said they've ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. Morrison looked at his ambassador. Kyle, my grandfather fought in World War III. My great-grandfather fought in World War II. Both of them faced enemies who seemed impossible to defeat. Both of them won because they refused to give up. This is different, Matthews said. These aren't human enemies. We don't know what they're capable of. You're right, Morrison agreed. We don't know what they can do, but I'll tell you what, I do know. Humanity didn't crawl out of caves and build cities by giving up when things looked hard. We didn't explore the oceans and climb mountains by accepting limits. And we sure as hell didn't reach the stars by letting someone else tell us we can't. Santos leaned forward. Mr. President, what if they have allies? What if other species support them? Dr. Price had been thinking about the same question. From what we saw, the Council includes many different species, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're all there voluntarily. What do you mean? Baker asked. Think about it, Price said. They told us no species has ever refused their protection. But what if that's because they forced everyone to join? What if some of those species would rather be free? The room fell quiet as everyone considered this possibility. Morrison made his decision. Here's what we're going to do. Dr. Price, your team gets unlimited resources to study alien technology. Admiral Baker, prepare our fleets, but keep them in defensive positions for now. Ambassador Matthews, you'll draft our official response to the Council. What should the response say? Matthews asked. Morrison smiled, but there was no humor in it. Tell them thank you for the offer, but humanity prefers to govern itself. Sir, Santos said, they're not going to like that answer. I'm counting on it, Morrison replied. If they wanted to destroy us, they would have done it already. The fact that they're trying to get us to surrender means they think they need our agreement. That gives us an advantage. Admiral Baker pulled up a star map showing Earth's position relative to the Council station. Mr. President, if they do attack, they'll probably come straight at Earth. We should start evacuating civilians from the major cities. No, Morrison said firmly. We're not going to panic our people. If we start massive evacuations, it sends a message that we expect to lose. But, sir, Baker began, Admiral, I understand your concern, but the moment we start acting like victims, we become victims. Humanity has never won a war by running away. Before it started, Dr. Price was studying the data from the council meeting on her tablet. Mr. President, there's something else to consider. They seemed very confident about their ability to force compliance, almost arrogant. Arrogance can be a weakness, Santos observed. Exactly, Morrison said. They've been the biggest power in the galaxy for 1,000 years. They're used to everyone being afraid of them. But fear is just another word for respect. You haven't earned yet. As the meeting continued, Captain Alex Turner of the USS Defiance received new orders. He was to take his ship on reconnaissance missions near the edge of human space. His job was to watch for any signs of alien activity and report back immediately. Turner read his orders twice before calling his crew to battle stations. Like everyone else in Earth's space forces, he had joined to explore the galaxy and protect humanity. He had never expected to face a threat like this. But as his ship moved into position at the edge of the solar system, Turner felt something he hadn't expected. He wasn't afraid. He was angry. These aliens thought they could just show up and demand humanity's surrender. They thought humans would roll over and accept slavery. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Back on Earth, President Morrison ended the emergency session with a simple statement. Ladies and gentlemen, humanity has faced extinction before. We've faced enemies who seemed impossible to defeat. Each time, we've survived because we refused to give up. This time will be no different. The countdown to the alien deadline had begun. The 30 days had passed, like a countdown to war. President Morrison stood in the communications center of New Geneva Orbital Station, looking out at Earth through the massive windows. Behind him, technicians prepared the most important broadcast in human history. In a few minutes, humanity would give its answer to the Galactic Council. Mr. President, all networks are ready, announced Communications Officer Beth Williams. The signal will reach every human settlement in the solar system, and our deep space relays will carry it to the Council station. Morrison nodded. He had spent weeks preparing for this moment, working with his advisors to craft humanity's response. The words were simple, but their meaning would echo across the galaxy. Begin transmission. The cameras activated, and Morrison looked directly into the lens. Around the solar system, every human stopped what they were doing to listen. My fellow humans, Morrison began, his voice calm and steady. 30 days ago, we made contact with an alien civilization, calling itself the Galactic Council. They demanded our surrender. They wanted us to give up our freedom, our military, and our right to explore the stars. He paused, letting the words sink in. Today, I speak for every man, woman, and child on Earth, on Mars, on Luna, and in every human settlement across our solar system. Our answer is simple. We will not kneel. Morrison's voice grew stronger. We did not struggle for thousands of years to build free societies just to hand our freedom over to aliens who have never earned the right to rule us. We did not reach for the stars so that someone else could tell us how far we're allowed to go. On the council station, Chancellor Vextar and his advisors watched the transmission with growing disbelief. Around the chamber, representatives from 47 alien species stared at the screen in shock. "Impossible," whispered one of the council members. "No species has ever refused our authority." Morrison continued his broadcast. "The council claims they have ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. They say they maintain order and peace. But what they call order, we call slavery. What they call peace, we call the silence of the oppressed." Vextar's black eyes grew wider. His pale blue skin seemed to grow even paler. "To the Galactic Council, we say this," Morrison declared. "Humanity offers friendship to all who come in peace. We offer trade, cooperation, and mutual respect. But we will never offer submission. We are not your subjects. We are not your property. We are free beings, and we intend to stay that way." The transmission ended. For a long moment, the council chamber was completely silent. Then Vextar exploded in rage. "Primitive fools! They dare to defy the council! They dare to reject our protection!" War Marshal Cricksoth, a large alien with red skin and 4 arms, stepped forward. "Chancellor, perhaps they simply do not understand the consequences of their defiance. Allow me to demonstrate the power of the council." "No," Vextar said, his voice cold as ice. "They want to learn the hard way? Then we will teach them. Mobilize the war fleets, all of them." "All of them, Chancellor?" Cricksoth asked, surprised. Surely one battle group would be sufficient to deal with primitives. Vextar's thin lips curled into what might have been a smile. "Marshal, when the council makes an example, we make it memorable. I want every species in the galaxy to see what happens to those who refuse our authority." Back on Earth, Admiral Baker was coordinating humanity's response from his command center. Every ship in Earth's fleet had taken position around the solar system. They knew the aliens were coming. Captain Alex Turner commanded the USS Defiance. At the outer edge of human space, his sensors had detected massive energy signatures moving toward Earth at incredible speed. "Admiral Baker, this is Captain Turner," he reported over the communication link. "I'm reading multiple contacts approaching our position. Whatever they're bringing, it's big." "How big?" Baker asked. Turner checked his readings again. "Sir, I count at least 200 ships, maybe more. They're still too far away to get exact numbers." In her laboratory, Dr. Angela Price worked frantically with her team to understand the alien technology. They had made some progress, but not enough. Her assistant, scientist Ben Clark, looked up from his computer screen. "Dr. Price, I think I found something interesting," Clark said. "Look at these energy readings from the council station." Price studied the data. "These patterns, they're all based on exotic energy manipulation. Plasma weapons, energy shields, faster-than-light drives that bend space-time itself." "That's what I thought too," Clark said. "But look at this. See how stable their energy fields are. They're incredibly efficient, but they're also incredibly specialized." "What do you mean?" Clark highlighted sections of the data. "Their technology is designed to fight other energy-based weapons. Their shields deflect energy attacks. Their armor disperses heat and electromagnetic radiation. Everything about their defensive systems is built around the assumption that their enemies will use energy weapons." Dr. Price felt her heart racing. "Ben, are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying their defenses might not work against kinetic weapons. Old-fashioned bullets, missiles, railgun slugs. Physical projectiles that rely on mass and velocity instead of energy." Price grabbed her communication device. "Admiral Baker, this is Dr. Price. I need to speak with you immediately." On the council flagship, Vextar stood before a massive viewing. screen showing the approaching human solar system. His fleet stretched out behind him, hundreds of ships carrying the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. "Human fleet detected ahead," reported his tactical officer. "Primitive vessels, kinetic-based, propulsion systems, energy signatures indicate simple fusion reactors." Vextar studied the human ships on his screen. They looked crude compared to council vessels, angular and functional, with none of the elegant curves of proper spacecraft. "How many ships do they have?" he asked. "Approximately 57 combat vessels, Chancellor, all much smaller than our cruisers." Vextar laughed. 57 ships against our 200, and their weapons are centuries behind ours. This will not be a battle. It will be an extermination. But on Earth, Admiral Baker was implementing Dr. Price's discoveries. Every human ship was being retrofitted with additional kinetic weapons. Railguns were charged to maximum power. Missile tubes were loaded with tungsten core warheads. If Price was right, humanity's primitive weapons might be exactly what they needed. Captain Lisa Torres, who had commanded the first contact mission, now led a squadron of destroyers near Earth's moon. She watched her tactical display as the alien fleet grew closer. "All ships, this is Torres," she broadcast to her squadron. "Remember what we're fighting for. We're not just defending Earth. We're defending the right of every free being in the galaxy to say no to tyrants." The alien fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Their ships gleamed like jewels against the black of space, powered by exotic energies that human science barely understood. But as the two fleets moved toward each other, neither side knew that this battle would change the galaxy forever. The Council expected an easy victory against primitive humans with obsolete weapons. They were about to discover that sometimes the old ways work best. Chancellor Vexitar gave the order to attack, confident that within hours humanity would be begging for mercy. He had no idea that humans had never learned how to beg. The Galactic Council's war fleet moved through space like a storm of stars. War Marshal Crixoth stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, watching as 200 council vessels approached the human solar system. Each ship was a masterpiece of advanced technology, powered by exotic matter and armed with weapons that could vaporize asteroids. "Marshal, we are within weapons range of the human fleet," reported his tactical officer. Crixoth studied the human ships on his display. They looked pitiful compared to council vessels, small, angular, and obviously primitive. He almost felt sorry for them. "Chancellor Vextar wishes to address the human fleet before we destroy them," the communications officer announced. "Very well," Crixoth said. "Open a channel." On Earth, Admiral Baker watched the alien fleet from his command center. The enemy ships were beautiful in a terrifying way. They seemed to glow with internal light, and their smooth, curved hulls looked more like works of art than warships. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the enemy fleet," reported a technician. "Put it through." Chancellor Vextar's image appeared on the main screen. His pale blue skin and large black eyes seemed to stare directly at Baker. "Humans," Vextar said, his voice filled with cold authority. "You have made a grave error. The Council offered you protection, and you chose defiance. Now you will learn the price of that choice." Baker stepped forward. "This is Admiral Baker of the Earth Defense Forces. Your Galactic Council has no authority over humanity. Withdraw from our system immediately." Vextar's thin lips curved into what might have been a smile. "Admiral, you command 57 primitive ships against the combined might of the galaxy's greatest civilization. Your weapons are crude projectiles. Your armor is simple metal alloy. Your shields are barely functional energy fields. Maybe, Baker replied. But they're our weapons, defending our people in our space. Your courage is admirable but pointless, Vextar said. Surrender now, and your species will be allowed to serve the Council. Continue this futile resistance, and humanity will become extinct. The transmission ended. Captain Sam Rodriguez commanded the USS Vanguard, one of humanity's newest destroyers. His ship was positioned at the front of the human formation, directly in the path of the approaching alien fleet. Captain, enemy ships are charging their weapons, reported his tactical officer. Energy readings are off the charts. Rodriguez felt sweat forming on his forehead. Through his ship's windows, he could see the alien vessels growing larger as they approached. Strange lights began to pulse along their hulls. All ships, stand ready. Admiral Baker's voice came over the communication system. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for the right to be free. The first Council ship opened fire. A beam of pure energy, brighter than the sun, lanced across space toward the USS Vanguard. Rodriguez watched in horror as the weapon struck his ship's shields. The energy field that was supposed to protect them lasted exactly 3 seconds before collapsing completely. "Shields down!" his tactical officer shouted. "Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. More energy beams reached out from the Council fleet. Human ships tried to dodge, but the alien weapons moved at the speed of light. The USS Defender took a direct hit and exploded in a ball of superheated gas. The USS Guardian lost its entire forward section to a plasma torpedo. Captain Alex Turner, commanding the USS Defiance, fired his ship's railguns at the nearest Council vessel. The tungsten slug streaked through space at tremendous speed and struck the alien ship's hull. To Turner's amazement, the projectiles bounced off harmlessly. "Captain, their shields are deflecting our kinetic rounds," his weapons officer reported. "How? Is that possible?" Turner demanded. But there was no time for answers. Another Council ship fired on the Defiance, and Turner had to throw his vessel into a desperate evasive maneuver. On Earth, Dr. Angela Price watched the battle through the Orbital Defense Network's sensors. Her team had been so sure that kinetic weapons would be effective against energy-based defenses, but the human projectiles were having no effect at all. "I don't understand," said Ben Clark, staring at the tactical display. "The physics should work. Kinetic energy should be able to penetrate energy shields. Unless," Dr. Price said slowly, "their shields work differently than we thought." She pulled up the sensor readings from the battle. The Council ships were surrounded by shimmering fields of energy that seemed to bend space itself around them. "Ben, look at this. Their shields aren't just deflecting energy. They're deflecting everything. Matter, energy, space-time itself. It's like they're wrapped in a bubble of warped reality." Clark studied the data. That would explain why our projectiles are bouncing off. If their shields can bend space, they can redirect anything that tries to hit them. Meanwhile, the battle continued to go badly for humanity. The Council's plasma weapons tore through human ships like paper. Their energy shields seemed impenetrable, and they had nearly 4 times as many vessels as the human fleet. Captain Lisa Torres tried to rally her squadron as they retreated toward Earth's moon. Half of her ships had already been destroyed or badly damaged. The aliens were advancing, methodically, destroying everything in their path. "Admiral Baker, this is Torres," she reported. "We can't stop them. Their technology is too advanced. We need to fall back to Earth's orbital defenses." "Negative," Baker replied. "If we let them reach Earth, millions of people will die. All ships continue the attack." but the attack was hopeless. Human weapons could not penetrate alien shields, while Council energy beams cut through human defenses like they weren't even there. On the Council flagship, Vextar watched the slaughter with satisfaction. Exactly as predicted, he told Crixoth. Their primitive weapons are useless against our technology. The humans are retreating toward their homeworld, Crixoth reported. Should we pursue? Of course, Vextar said. Let them lead us to Earth. When we destroy their home planet, every species in the galaxy will understand the price of defying the Council. Captain Rodriguez struggled to keep the USS Vanguard operational as Council ships closed in around him. His shields were gone, his weapons were damaged, and half his crew was dead or wounded. But he refused to surrender. Sir, we're receiving an emergency transmission from Dr. Price on Earth, his communications officer reported. Put her through. Dr. Price's image appeared on the damaged screen. Behind her, Rodriguez could see the chaos of her laboratory as her team worked frantically on something. Captain Rodriguez, listen carefully, Price said urgently. We were wrong about their shields. They're not just energy barriers. They're space-time distortion fields. But we think we've found a weakness. What kind of weakness? Rodriguez asked, dodging another energy beam. Their shields work by bending space around their ships. But that distortion requires enormous amounts of energy to maintain. If we can overload their power systems... The transmission cut off as another Council ship fired on the Vanguard. Rodriguez looked at his tactical officer. Did you get that? Some of it, sir. Something about overloading their power systems. Rodriguez studied the alien ships on his display. They were beautiful, deadly, and seemingly invincible. But Dr. Price had found something. Maybe there was still hope. All human ships, this is Rodriguez, he broadcast. Focus all firepower on single targets. Keep hitting them until something breaks. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was all they had. The surviving human ships regrouped and began concentrating their attacks on individual Council vessels. The battle for humanity's survival was far from over. As the Council fleet advanced toward Earth, Vextar was already planning his victory speech. Soon, the galaxy would see what happened to species that refused to submit to Council authority. But he had underestimated human determination. Even facing impossible odds, the humans refused to give up. And in her laboratory on Earth, Dr. Price was about to make a discovery that would change everything. Dr. Angela Price had not slept in 36 hours. Her laboratory looked like a war zone. Computer screens displayed streams of data from the ongoing battle. Holographic projections showed Council ship designs rotating in three-dimensional space. Empty coffee cups and food containers covered every available surface. Ben, look at this, Price called to her assistant, who was hunched over a computer terminal across the room. Ben Clark hurried over, stumbling slightly from exhaustion. What did you find? Price pointed to a complex energy diagram on her screen. I've been analyzing the sensor data from every hit our ships have scored on Council vessels. Look at these power fluctuations. Clark studied the readings. Their energy output spikes every time we fire at them. Exactly, Price said, her excitement growing. Their shields aren't passive barriers. They're active systems that have to respond to every incoming attack. And watch what happens when multiple ships fire at the same target. She pulled up another set of readings. This time, the energy spikes were much larger. The more we shoot at them, the more power their shields consume, Clark realized. But our weapons still aren't getting through. Price smiled grimly. That's because we've been thinking about this all wrong. We assume their shields were designed to stop energy weapons. But what if they're designed to stop everything? She manipulated the holographic display, showing the space-time distortion around a council ship. Look at this. Their shields don't just deflect attacks. They create a bubble of warped space-time around each ship. Anything that enters that bubble gets redirected away from the vessel. That's incredibly advanced technology, Clark said. How do we fight something like that? By understanding its limitations, Price replied. She pulled up new data from her analysis. Creating that level of space-time distortion requires massive amounts of energy. And energy means heat. Heat that has to go somewhere. Clark's eyes widened as he understood. They have to dissipate the excess energy, or their ships would overheat. Right. And here's the beautiful part. Their technology is so advanced, so efficient, that they've never had to deal with sustained attacks. Look at this. Price showed him sensor readings from the battle. Every time our ships concentrate fire, on a single council vessel, their heat signatures spike. They're having trouble managing the thermal load. But our weapons still aren't penetrating their defenses, Clark pointed out. Price grinned. That's because we're using the wrong weapons. Ben, what happens when you fire a railgun slug at a target? The projectile transfers kinetic energy to the target, Clark answered automatically. And what happens if the target redirects that projectile using space-time distortion? Clark thought for a moment. The energy has to go somewhere. It gets converted to heat. Exactly, Price exclaimed. Every time we fire at them, we're forcing their shields to work harder. We're heating up their systems. And if we can generate enough heat, their shields will overload, Clark finished, or their ships will have to shut down their defenses to prevent damage to their internal systems. Price was already reaching for her communication device. Admiral Baker, this is Dr. Price. I need to speak with you immediately. In space, the battle continued to rage. The human fleet had been pushed back to Earth's orbital defenses, but they were still fighting. Captain Sam Rodriguez of the USS Vanguard led a desperate attack against a Council heavy cruiser, coordinating with 3 other human ships. All ships, concentrate fire on the lead Council vessel, Rodriguez ordered. Keep firing until your weapons overheat. The 4 human ships unleashed everything they had. Railgun slugs, missiles, energy beams, and particle weapons all converged on the alien ship. The Council vessel's shields flared as they redirected the incoming attacks. Sir, their energy signature is climbing, reported Rodriguez's tactical officer on the Council ship. Alarms began to sound. Shield overload warning, announced the ship's artificial intelligence. Thermal regulators approaching maximum capacity. The alien captain, a tall being with green skin and multiple eyes, stared at his instruments in confusion. How is this possible? These primitive weapons should not be capable of straining our systems. But the human ships kept firing, and the Council vessel's heat levels kept rising. Meanwhile, Dr. Price had reached Admiral Baker. Admiral, I know how to beat them, she said urgently. I'm listening, Baker replied from his command center. Their shields work by bending space-time around their ships. But that process generates enormous amounts of heat. If we can overload their thermal management systems, their shields will fail. How do we do that? Concentrated fire. Don't try to destroy them with single shots. Hit them with everything you have over and over again. Eventually, their systems will overload. Baker nodded. I'll relay the new tactics to all ships immediately. Captain Lisa Torres received the new orders just as her squadron was engaging, a group of Council destroyers. You heard the Admiral, she announced to her ships. Pick your targets and don't stop shooting. Torres selected the nearest council vessel and ordered her ships to focus their attacks. Railgun slugs streaked through space, followed by volleys of missiles. The alien ship's shields deflected everything, but Torres could see the energy patterns around the vessel beginning to fluctuate. "Keep firing," she ordered. "It's working." On the council flagship, War Marshal Crixoth was receiving troubling reports from his fleet. "Several ships are reporting shield instabilities," his tactical officer announced. "Impossible," Crixoth replied. "Human weapons cannot threaten our defenses." "Sir, the humans have changed their tactics. Instead of trying to penetrate our shields, they're overloading them with sustained fire." Crixoth studied his tactical display. The human ships were grouping up and concentrating their attacks on individual council vessels. It was a crude strategy, but it seemed to be having an effect. "Order all ships to increase power to their thermal management systems," he commanded. But that order came too late for one council cruiser. Under sustained fire from 4 human ships, its shields finally failed. The space-time distortion field collapsed, leaving the alien vessel vulnerable. Captain Alex Turner of the USS Defiance didn't waste the opportunity. "Fire everything!" he ordered. Railgun slugs slammed into the council ship's hull, tearing through armor that had been designed to withstand energy weapons but was vulnerable to kinetic impact. The alien vessel shuddered under the assault and began venting atmosphere. "First, blood to humanity," Turner announced to his crew. The destruction of the council cruiser sent shock waves through both fleets. The humans cheered as they realized their new tactics were working. The council forces recoiled in surprise. Their ships were supposed to be invulnerable. Chancellor Vexatar watched the destruction from his flagship, his black eyes wide with disbelief. "How?" he whispered. "The humans are using sustained kinetic bombardment to overload our shield systems," Crixoth explained. "Our thermal management cannot handle the energy load from continuous attacks." Vextar's pale blue skin flushed with anger. "Primitive barbarians! They fight without honor, without strategy. They simply keep shooting." "Should we withdraw and develop countermeasures?" Crixoth asked. "Never!" Vextar snarled. "The Council does not retreat from primitives. Order all ships to increase their attack frequency. Destroy the human fleet before they can exploit this weakness further." But it was too late. Word of the new tactics was spreading through the human fleet. Ships that had been retreating turned around and rejoined the battle. Captains who had thought the fight was hopeless suddenly had new determination. Nicole Gray, a fighter pilot launched from the carrier USS Independence, led her squadron in a coordinated attack on a Council destroyer. The small human fighters swarmed around the alien ship like angry insects, their weapons firing continuously. "This is Gray to all fighters," she announced. "Don't let up. Keep shooting until they burn." The Council destroyer tried to target the human fighters, but its weapons were designed for ship-to-ship combat. The small, fast human craft were difficult to hit, and their constant attacks were heating up the alien ship's shields. In her laboratory, Dr. Price watched the battle turn in humanity's favor. "It's working," she told Ben Clark. "Look at these readings. Council ships across the fleet are showing thermal stress. They're having to choose between maintaining their shields and keeping their ships from overheating," Clark observed. "And that's a choice humans never have to make," Price said with satisfaction. "Our weapons don't require exotic energy fields. We just point and shoot." The tide of battle was turning. For the first time since the fight began, human ships were destroying Council vessels. The aliens' technological advantage was being overcome by human determination and ingenuity. But the war was far from over. The Council still had numerical superiority, and Vextar was not the type to accept defeat easily. As the battle raged on, both sides began to realize that this conflict would determine the future of the galaxy. Would the Council's 1,000-year reign continue, or would humanity's refusal to submit inspire others to fight for their freedom? The answer would be decided in the darkness between the stars. The galaxy was about to witness something it had never seen before. The Galactic Council in retreat. Admiral Chris Baker stood in his command center on Earth, watching the tactical display with growing amazement. For the first time in the battle, human ships outnumbered Council vessels in several sectors. The alien fleet was breaking apart as more and more of their ships fell to humanity's new tactics. "Admiral, we're receiving surrender requests from 3 Council vessels," reported his communications officer. Baker almost couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Surrender requests? From them?" "Yes, sir. They're requesting permission to withdraw from the battle." Baker thought for a moment. "Tell them they can withdraw if they power down their weapons and leave our solar system immediately. But make it clear. If they come back, we'll destroy them." The tide had turned so dramatically that Baker was beginning to think about taking the offensive. For too long, humanity had been reacting to Council moves. It was time to start making some moves of their own. Captain Danny Foster commanded the USS Relentless, one of Earth's newest destroyers. His ship was equipped with an experimental weapon that had never been tested in combat, a railgun that could fire tungsten rods at nearly 10% of light speed. "Captain, we have a clear shot at that Council dreadnought," his tactical officer announced. Foster studied the massive alien ship on his display. It was one of the largest vessels in the Council fleet, bristling with weapons and protected by the strongest shields. But its thermal signature showed that its systems were already under stress from previous attacks. "Load a tungsten penetrator," Foster ordered. "Full power." The experimental railgun charged up, drawing energy from the ship's entire power grid. In the weapons chamber, a rod of tungsten the size of a telephone pole accelerated to tremendous speed. Foster watched the energy readings climb. "Fire!" The tungsten rod streaked across space at nearly 30,000 kilometers per second. The Council dreadnought's shields tried to deflect it, but the kinetic energy was simply too massive. The space-time distortion field collapsed under the load, and the rod punched through the alien ship's hull like it was made of paper. The dreadnought exploded in a brilliant flash of light that could be seen from Earth. "Scratch 1, dreadnought," Foster announced to his crew, who erupted in cheers. On the Council flagship, Chancellor Vextar watched his fleet disintegrate with growing panic. In less than 6 hours, he had gone from commanding an overwhelming force to watching his ships flee in disorder. "Marshal Crixoth, what is our current status?" he demanded. Crixoth studied his tactical display grimly. "We have lost 47 ships. Another 23 have withdrawn from combat due to system failures. The humans have lost only 12 vessels." "How is this possible?" Vextar raged. "We have the most advanced technology in the galaxy." "The humans are fighting in a way we never anticipated," Crixoth explained. "Our weapons and defenses were designed to fight civilized opponents who use energy-based warfare. These humans use crude kinetic weapons that our systems cannot efficiently counter." Vextar slammed his fist on the command console. "They're barbarians. They have no understanding of proper warfare." "Perhaps," Crixoth said quietly, "but barbarians who are winning." Meanwhile, Special Forces Commander Steve Parker was leading a very different kind of mission. While the main fleets battled in space, Parker and his team had been inserted onto a Council supply station near the edge of the solar system. "Remember, we're here to gather intelligence," Parker told his squad as they moved through the alien facility's corridors. "We need to know how their technology works and what other forces they might have." The station was mostly automated, with only a small alien crew. Parker's soldiers moved quickly and quietly, stunning the few guards they encountered with electromagnetic pulse weapons that shut down the aliens' energy-based equipment. In the station's data core, Parker's technical specialist, Sergeant Amy Brooks, connected her equipment to the alien computers. "I'm downloading everything I can," she reported. "Their encryption is tough, but our systems are learning their patterns." What Brooks found in the Council databases would shock humanity. Records showing dozens of species that had been forced to join the Council, detailed plans for the pacification of rebellious worlds, evidence of entire civilizations that had been wiped out for refusing to submit. "Commander," Brooks said, her voice shaking, "you need to see this." Parker looked at the translated data on her screen. It was a list of species that had been terminated by Council forces over the past 1,000 years. The list was 20 pages long. "My God," Parker whispered. "They're not just conquerors. They're genocidal maniacs." Back in the main battle, Captain Lisa Torres was coordinating the most successful human attack of the war. Her task force had surrounded a group of Council ships that had become separated from the main fleet. "All ships, execute pattern Delta," Torres ordered. "Continuous fire, overlapping fields of attack." Human vessels poured railgun slugs and missiles into the trapped Council ships. The aliens tried to fight back, but their energy weapons were less effective against the fast-moving human vessels, and their shields were overloading under the constant bombardment. One by one, the Council ships either exploded or surrendered. Torres watched with satisfaction as the last alien vessel powered down its weapons. "This is Captain Torres to surrendering. Council ships," she broadcast. "You will be escorted to a holding area near Earth's moon. Any attempt to escape or attack will result in your immediate destruction." For the first time in 1,000 years, Council ships were surrendering to an enemy force. Pilot Nicole Gray had been in continuous combat for 8 hours, leading her fighter squadron in attacks against Council vessels throughout the solar system. Her small ship had survived more battles than she could count, and she had personally witnessed the destruction of 6 enemy ships. "Gray to all fighters," she announced over the squadron frequency. "The big alien fleet is breaking up. Looks like they're trying to retreat to the edge of the system." "Should we pursue?" asked one of her pilots. Gray checked her fuel and ammunition levels. Her squadron was running low on both, but the opportunity was too good to pass up. "Affirmative. Let's make sure they don't come back." The human fighters streaked after the retreating Council vessels, harassing them with hit-and-run attacks that prevented the aliens from regrouping. In her laboratory on Earth, Dr. Angela Price was analyzing data from the battle when she made another crucial discovery. "Ben, look at this," she called to her assistant. "I've been studying the Council surrender transmissions." Ben Clark hurried over to her workstation. "What did you find?" "Their surrender messages aren't just tactical communications," Price explained. "They're including data packets with technical specifications. Look at this. Power systems, weapon designs, shield generators." Clark studied the information. "Why would they send us their technology?" Price smiled. "Because they're not just surrendering to us. They're defecting. Some of these ships want to switch sides." The implications were staggering. If Council forces were willing to defect to humanity, it meant the alien empire was not as unified as it appeared. Admiral Baker received Dr. Price's report with great interest. "Doctor, are you saying some of the aliens want to join us?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," Price replied. "We're receiving technical data from multiple council ships. They're essentially giving us the keys to their technology." Baker made a decision that would change the course of the war. "Open a channel to all council forces in our system." When the communication link was established, Baker addressed the alien fleet directly. "This is Admiral Baker of Earth Defense Forces. To any council ship that wishes to defect to humanity, you will be given safe passage and protection. We offer freedom to any being willing to fight for it." The response was immediate. 17 council ships broke away from the main fleet and requested permission to join human forces. Chancellor Vextar watched in horror as his own ships abandoned him. "Traitors!" he screamed. "How dare they betray the council?" But War Marshal Crixoth was already preparing for full retreat. The battle was lost, and staying would only result in more casualties. "Chancellor, we must withdraw," Crixoth said firmly. "We can regroup and return with a larger force." Vextar wanted to refuse, wanted to keep fighting until every human was dead. But the tactical situation was hopeless. His fleet was shattered, his ships were defecting, and the primitive humans had proven they could fight. "Very well," he said, through gritted teeth. "Order the retreat. But this is not over. The Council will return, and when we do, humanity will pay for this humiliation." As the surviving Council ships fled the solar system, humanity celebrated its first major victory against an alien empire. But the war was far from over. In the depths of space, other Council fleets were already mobilizing, and Chancellor Vextar was planning his revenge. The battle for Earth was won, but the battle for the galaxy was just beginning. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Humanity had defeated the Galactic Council. On thousands of worlds, in millions of cities, beings who had lived under Council rule for centuries looked up at the stars with something they had not felt in generations: hope. Captain Alex Turner of the USS Defiance led a pursuit force chasing the retreating Council fleet toward the edge of human space. His orders were simple: make sure the aliens kept running. "Captain, we're detecting massive energy signatures ahead," reported his sensor officer. "The Council ships are jumping to faster than light speed." Turner watched the alien vessels disappear, one by one, into hyperspace. "Let them go. They know what happens if they come back." But even as the immediate threat retreated, Turner knew this was far from over. The Council had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. They would not accept defeat easily. On Earth, President Morrison was dealing with an unprecedented situation: alien refugees. 17 Council ships had defected during the battle, bringing with them over 3,000 alien crew members from a dozen different species. Dr. Angela Price had been assigned to coordinate first contact with the defectors. She stood in the main hangar bay of the orbital station New Geneva, watching as the first alien shuttle approached. "Dr. Price, are you ready for this?" asked Admiral Baker, who stood beside her. "As ready as anyone can be," Price replied. "We're about to meet beings who have lived under tyranny for centuries. I can't imagine what that must be like." The alien shuttle landed, and its doors opened. The first being to emerge was tall and thin, with silver skin and large multifaceted eyes. It moved carefully, as if expecting to be attacked. Price stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Welcome to human space. I am Dr. Angela Price." The alien hesitated, then spoke in accented but clear English. "I am Science Officer Zelthar of the vessel Redemption. We seek asylum among your people," You have it, Price said simply. You're safe here. Zelthar's large eyes widened in what might have been surprise. Just like that? No demands? No conditions? Just like that, Price confirmed. Though we would appreciate any information you can share about the Council's capabilities. Over the next several hours, Price and her team debriefed the alien defectors. What they learned was both encouraging and terrifying. The Council controls over 2,000 star systems, Zelthar explained as he studied a holographic map of the galaxy. But their control is not as absolute as they claim. Many species serve only because they fear destruction. Ben Clark, who had been taking notes, looked up. How many species are we talking about? 47 species serve on the Council directly. Another defector, a squat being with blue skin, replied. But hundreds more exist under Council protection. Most were conquered centuries ago. Dr. Price felt her heart racing. You're saying there are hundreds of alien civilizations that might be willing to rebel against the Council, if they believed they could win, Zelthar said carefully. Your victory has already caused discussions among many worlds. Meanwhile, Captain Danny Foster was leading a Marine boarding team onto one of the captured Council ships. The vessel, now designated Prize Ship Alpha, was a treasure trove of alien technology. Careful with that equipment, Foster warned his Marines as they secured the ship's bridge. This stuff is more advanced than anything we've ever seen. Marine Colonel Amy Brooks was examining the ship's weapon systems. Captain, look at this. Their energy weapons are incredibly sophisticated, but they're also incredibly complex. Look at all these power conduits and cooling systems. Foster studied the alien weapon. No wonder our simple kinetic weapons gave them so much trouble. They're used to fighting opponents who use technology as complex as theirs. In the ship's data core, Brooks made an even more significant discovery. Captain, I found star charts showing the location of every Council world. And look at this. Detailed fleet dispositions, troop strengths, even economic data. Foster looked at the information with growing excitement. Amy, you've just handed us the keys to the galaxy, but the most important discovery came from the ship's communication logs. Brooks found records of messages between Council ships during the battle, and what she read made her blood run cold. Captain, you need to see this, she said urgently. The Council wasn't just planning to conquer humanity. They were planning to exterminate us completely. Foster read the translated messages over her shoulder. Complete sterilization of the human homeworld. No survivors to serve as an example to other species. Sir, Brooks said quietly, if we had surrendered, they would have killed us anyway. The realization that humanity had been fighting for its very existence, not just its freedom, sent shockwaves through Earth's leadership. President Morrison called an emergency session to discuss the implications. Ladies and gentlemen, Morrison said to his assembled advisors, we now know that this was never about conquest or subjugation. The Council intended genocide from the beginning. Defense Secretary Maria Santos leaned forward. Mr. President, if they were willing to commit genocide against humanity, what have they done to other species that resisted them? Dr. Price, who had been studying the captured data, had an answer. According to the records we've recovered, the Council has completely exterminated at least 37 species over the past millennium. Worlds that refused to submit were bombarded from orbit until all life was destroyed. The room fell silent as the magnitude of the Council's crimes became clear. Admiral Baker spoke first. Mr. President, we can't just defend ourselves anymore. If we don't act, the Council will eventually return with a larger fleet, and next time they might succeed. What are you suggesting, Admiral? Morrison asked. I'm suggesting we take the fight to them, Baker replied. We have captured ships, defector crews willing to help us, and detailed intelligence about Council territories. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Council looks vulnerable. Morrison considered this carefully. Ambassador Matthews, what's your assessment? Kyle Matthews had been quiet during most of the meeting, but now he spoke with conviction. Mr. President, the alien defectors have told us that dozens of worlds are questioning Council authority after our victory. If we can demonstrate that the Council can be defeated, we might trigger a galaxy-wide rebellion. Morrison made his decision. Admiral Baker, begin planning for offensive operations against Council territories. Dr. Price, work with our alien allies to identify potential rebel worlds we can support. As the meeting ended, Morrison looked out at the stars through the command center's windows. Humanity had won its first battle against galactic tyranny, but the war for freedom was just beginning. In the depths of space, Chancellor Vextar was rallying what remained of his fleet. The defeat at Earth had been a humiliation, but it was not the end. The Council had resources across thousands of worlds, and Vextar intended to use every one of them to crush humanity. Marshal Cricksoth, he said to his war commander, send messages to every Council world. I want every ship, every weapon, every soldier mobilized for the next attack. Chancellor, Cricksoth said carefully, some worlds are questioning whether we should continue this conflict. The humans proved more formidable than expected. Vexitar's black eyes glowed with rage. Any world that questions the Council's authority will share humanity's fate. Send that message as well. But across the galaxy, the Council's subjects were asking questions they had never dared ask before. If primitives like humans could defeat the mighty Council fleet, what did that say about Council power? And if humans could fight for their freedom and win, why couldn't others do the same? On the world of Kepler Prime, a species called the Andromedans held secret meetings to discuss rebellion. On Vega Station, the bird-like aviarians began hiding weapons and supplies. Throughout Council space, the seeds of revolution were being planted, and at the center of it all was humanity, a species that had refused to kneel and inspired others to stand up as well. The galaxy would never be the same. Captain Turner received new orders as his ship patrolled the edge of human space. Prepare for humanity's first offensive mission against the Galactic Council. The hunters were about to become the hunted. The war for galactic freedom was about to begin in earnest. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, President Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Independence as it approached the Council homeworld of Dominion Prime. The war had spread across dozens of star systems. Human forces, supported by growing numbers of alien allies, had liberated world after world from Council control. The galaxy-wide rebellion that humanity had sparked was now unstoppable. Mr. President, announced Captain Victoria Lane, we're receiving a transmission from the surface. Morrison nodded. Put it through. Chancellor Vextar's image appeared on the main screen. The once proud alien leader looked haggard and defeated. His pale blue skin had taken on a grayish tint, and his large black eyes held a desperate gleam. President Morrison, Vextar said, his voice no longer carrying the authority it once had. The Council. We are prepared to discuss terms. Morrison studied the alien who had once demanded humanity's surrender. Chancellor, are you offering To surrender? The Council does not surrender, Vextar replied, but his words lacked conviction. We offer negotiations. There's nothing to negotiate, Morrison said calmly. You tried to commit genocide against my species. You've enslaved dozens of civilizations for centuries. The only terms I'm prepared to discuss are unconditional surrender. Around the Council homeworld, the combined fleet of humanity and its allies spread out in battle formation. Ships from 23 different species flew alongside human vessels, former Council subjects who had joined the rebellion. On the bridge of the USS Defiance, Captain Alex Turner coordinated with his alien allies. Beside him stood Commander Zelthar, the defector who had become one of humanity's most trusted advisors. Captain Turner, Zelthar said, sensors are detecting massive energy buildups on the planet's surface. They may be preparing for a final battle. Turner nodded grimly. Or they're planning to destroy their own world rather than surrender it. The thought that the Council might commit planetary suicide rather than face defeat had occurred to many in the human fleet. It would be consistent with their genocidal mentality, but Morrison had a different plan. Captain Lane, open a channel to all Council forces in this system, he ordered. When the communication link was established, Morrison addressed not just Vextar, but every being in the Council fleet and on the planet below. My name is Jake Morrison, President of United Earth. 6 months ago, your Council demanded that humanity surrender our freedom. We refused. Today, I'm here to offer something your leaders never offered us. A choice. He paused, letting his words reach every corner of the system. To every being serving the Council, I offer you the same choice we gave our enemies at Earth. Join us in building a free galaxy, or leave and never return. But the age of the Council's tyranny is over. The response was immediate. Throughout the Council fleet, ships began powering down their weapons and requesting permission to defect. On the planet's surface, entire cities declared their independence from Council rule. Admiral Chris Baker, commanding the human battle group, watched in amazement as the Council's final stronghold crumbled without a shot being fired. Mr. President, he reported, I'm reading massive defections throughout their forces. Entire fleet groups are requesting to join our alliance. On the Council flagship, War Marshal Crixoth faced the hardest decision of his long military career. He had served the Council for over 2 centuries, but he had also witnessed their crimes firsthand. Chancellor, he said to Vextar, perhaps it is time to consider that the Council's methods were wrong. Vextar turned on his War Marshal with fury. Traitor! The Council has maintained order for 1,000 years. Order built on fear and murder, Crixoth replied. I have seen the records, Vextar. I know what we did to species that refused to submit. The humans are offering us something we never offered others, mercy. Crixoth activated his personal communicator. This is War Marshal Crixoth to the human fleet. I formally surrender all forces under my command and request to join your alliance. Vextar screamed in rage, but it was too late. The Council's own military commander had switched sides. In the weeks that followed, humanity found itself in an unprecedented position. Leaders of a galactic alliance dedicated to freedom rather than conquest. Dr. Angela Price had been appointed as Earth's first Galactic Affairs Minister, responsible for coordinating with the dozens of species that had joined the human-led alliance. Her office on the orbital station New Geneva had become the unofficial capital of the new galactic government. Dr. Price, said her assistant Ben Clark, we're receiving applications for alliance membership from 12 more species today. Price looked at the list with satisfaction. Ben, when this all started, I never imagined we'd be building a new galactic civilization. What should we call it? Clark asked. The Human Empire? The Earth Alliance? Price shook her head. Nothing. With human or Earth in the name. We're not conquerors. We're liberators. This alliance belongs to every free being in the galaxy. The solution came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Kyle Matthews, working with representatives from 57 species, proposed the name that would define the new era, the Free Galactic Federation. The founding document was simple: voluntary membership, mutual defense, and the right of every being to determine their own destiny. No species would be forced to join, and any member could leave at any time. Captain Danny Foster, now promoted to Admiral, led the task force responsible for hunting down the remaining Council loyalists. Most had fled to the galaxy's outer rim, where they posed little threat. But some, led by die-hard fanatics, continued to fight guerrilla wars against Federation forces. Admiral Foster, reported Marine Colonel Amy Brooks, "We've located the last Council stronghold in the Andromeda sector. Intelligence suggests Vextar himself is there." Foster studied the tactical display. The Council remnants had fortified an asteroid base, but their forces were outnumbered 50-1. "Colonel Brooks, prepare your Marines for a final assault. Let's end this war once and for all." The battle for the asteroid base was brief but fierce. Council loyalists fought with the desperation of fanatics, but they were overwhelmed by Federation forces. When the shooting stopped, Vextar was found in the base's command center, dead by his own hand rather than face capture. With Vextar's death, the last organized resistance to the Federation collapsed. 1 year after the Battle of Earth, President Morrison stood before the assembled representatives of the Free Galactic Federation in the Great Hall of New Geneva Station. Beings from across the galaxy had gathered to witness the signing of the Federation Charter. "My friends," Morrison began, "we gather today not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals. For too long, this galaxy knew only the rule of fear. Today, we choose the rule of hope." The charter was signed by representatives of 184 species, creating the largest voluntary alliance in galactic history. As the ceremony concluded, Morrison found himself standing at an observation deck, looking out at the stars. Beside him stood Dr. Price, Admiral Baker, and Ambassador Matthews, the team that had guided humanity through its first galactic war. "So what happens now?" Matthews asked. Morrison smiled. "Now we do what humans have always done. We explore, we learn, we grow. But this time we do it together with friends who share our values." Dr. Price pointed to a star map showing Federation territory. "Jake, look at this. In less than 2 years, we've gone from a single species confined to one solar system to leaders of a federation spanning half the galaxy. And we did it without conquering anyone," Baker added. "Every world that joined us chose to join." Lieutenant Commander Paul Wright, who had served as Morrison's military aide throughout the war, approached the group with a message tablet. "Mr. President," Wright said, "I thought you'd want to see this. It's a report from our deep space scouts. They found evidence of other galaxies with civilizations like the Old Council, empires built on conquest and slavery." Morrison read the report with interest. "Paul, what are you thinking?" Wright smiled. "I'm thinking, sir, that there are a lot of beings out there who could use our help learning how to be free." Morrison looked out at the stars again, where Federation ships moved peacefully alongside vessels from dozens of species. Humanity had refused to kneel to tyrants, and in doing so had shown the galaxy a better way. "Well then," Morrison said quietly, "I guess our work is just beginning." In the years that followed, the Free Galactic Federation would become known throughout the universe as a beacon of hope for oppressed beings everywhere. Ships bearing the Federation's symbol, a simple star surrounded by a circle of smaller stars representing member species, would carry the message of freedom to the farthest reaches of space. And at the center of it all were the humans, the species that had refused to negotiate with tyrants and had instead chosen to fight for the right of every being to live free. The galaxy would never be the same. The age of the Council was over. The age of freedom had begun.